I had built the system from scratch. Every line of code, every formula, every protocol, I created it. The financial backbone of the company, they called it. Without it, no payment could process, no invoice would close, no deal would finalize. And yet, no one seemed to notice me. For years, I had poured my nights into spreadsheets, servers, and algorithms while my boss, Mr. Calder, took all the credit. He smiled at the board, and they nodded, calling him a genius. Meanwhile, I stayed in the shadows, coffee-stained and exhausted, wondering when someone would recognize the truth. It all changed one Thursday morning. The HR manager walked into my office with a hesitant smile. "Rachel, can we talk?" I looked up. Something in her tone made my stomach twist. She handed me a letter. I unfolded it carefully, my heart sinking with every word. "We have decided to replace your position with a trainee. Your contract ends next week." I stared at it, frozen. Trainee. A person who had no idea how the system worked. A person who didn't understand the risks if even a single number went wrong. And they thought this would be smooth. I clenched my fists. My voice shook. "You'll regret this. Every single bit." For a moment I just sat there, staring at the computer screen. The system I had built hummed quietly, processing thousands of transactions without error. My name might not appear in the company newsletter, but every penny, every cent, every account owed ran through my mind, and through my code. I remembered the long nights, the moments when my friends called and I ignored them, telling myself, it's for the system, for the company, for me. Now, all that work was about to be handed to someone clueless. Someone who didn't understand the protocols, the audit alerts, the security checks. My boss, Mr. Calder, had called me in. "Rachel, we appreciate your work," he said, leaning back in his chair, his eyes sharp. "But it's time for fresh blood. Trainee will take over. You can train her this week, then move on." I forced a smile. "Of course," I said, while anger burned behind my eyes. As I left the office, my mind raced. They had made a huge mistake. The system was complex, interwoven with my logic and my checks. No trainee could manage it in a week. And I knew exactly what would happen if they tried. A company built on numbers, without its guardian. Disaster. And I planned to watch it all unfold. That night I went to the server room. Alone. The fluorescent lights hummed. My fingers traced the lines of code I had written, remembering every algorithm, every safeguard. I opened the system logs. My heart sank at the thought. Trainee would have no idea what to do. She might press the wrong button, disable the wrong process, or ignore an alert. One mistake, one tiny mistake. And billions could be at risk. I smiled coldly. I wasn't angry because they replaced me. I was angry because they thought the company would survive without me. Couldn't. I went home, pretending to be calm around my family, while in my mind I ran simulations. Worst-case scenarios. Every possible failure point. Every loophole that only I knew existed. By the time I slept, I had a plan. The company thought they could discard me like an old file. But I had already prepared for every consequence. And they had no idea how fast the dominoes would fall. Monday morning arrived. I walked into the office as if nothing had changed. Trainee was there, nervous, fidgeting with a USB stick. Mr. Calder waved at her, smiling as though he had solved the biggest problem in his life. I sat at my desk, pretending to check emails. But in reality, I watched every move, every hesitation, every click. By lunchtime, mistakes began. Small ones. Accounts were mismatched, reports generated with errors, notifications ignored. Lee didn't understand the alerts. The system began flagging inconsistencies. I bit my lip. A tiny part of me felt guilty, but I reminded myself, they forced this. By mid-afternoon, the CEO called a meeting. Mr. Calder tried to explain, but numbers didn't lie. We're losing track of transactions. Some accounts are showing discrepancies. The CEO's eyes narrowed. "Rachel, can you fix this?" I smiled politely. "I can. But I'll need full access and time to audit the system." Mr. Calder hesitated. He didn't want to admit his mistake. But the truth was undeniable. And I realized something. Their arrogance had set the stage for a perfect collapse. That night I stayed late. Alone. I traced every broken process. Each alert was a thread. Each error a strand in a rope I could pull. By the next morning, chaos had begun. Counts were blocked. Invoices failed. Transactions reversed. Emails poured in. I sat in my office, pretending to work calmly, while secretly monitoring the damage. Every error that occurred, every panic-stricken executive call, confirmed my prediction. Mr. Calder stormed into my office. "Rachel, what is happening?" I leaned back, smiling faintly. "You replaced me with a trainee. That's happening." He froze. Panic flickered in his eyes. He finally understood. The company had depended entirely on my system, and without me fully in control, disaster was inevitable. I whispered to myself. They thought they could replace me. They thought it would be smooth. Watch closely. The collapse is just beginning. By Wednesday, the company was in full panic. The accounting team was running in circles. Numbers didn't match. Reports were failing. Emails from clients poured in, angry and confused. Trainee Lee looked terrified. Every time she pressed a key, an error message appeared. She glanced at me repeatedly, hoping I would intervene. I smiled faintly. "Remember," I whispered under my breath, "you should have respected me." I watched Mr. Calder pacing the floor, phone pressed to his ear, trying to explain the discrepancies to the board. He had no idea what he was dealing with. He thought it was just a minor hiccup. It wasn't. Every error, every warning, every blocked transaction was a reminder. The system was my creation. My logic. My rules. Without me it couldn't run. By late afternoon, the board called an emergency meeting. The CEO's face was grim. "Rachel," he said, "you warned us. Can you fix this? Or we'll lose clients, and potentially the company." I leaned back in my chair and smiled politely. "I can help. But first, someone needs to explain why I was replaced." Mr. Calder opened his mouth, but no words came. He couldn't. I realized something powerful. They had underestimated me. And that mistake. It was about to cost them everything. The next morning I arrived early. Trainee Lee was already at her desk, still confused, still failing to grasp the system's complexity. I didn't stop her. Not yet. I wanted her to feel the pressure, the chaos she had stepped into blindly. I logged into the system with my full credentials. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code, alerts, and automated fixes cascaded across the screens. Every action I took stabilized one part of the system, but left other areas intentionally vulnerable. By lunchtime, clients were calling again. "Where is the money?" they demanded. "Why are invoices reversed?" Mr. Calder's face turned red. He stormed toward me. "Rachel, fix it. Now." I nodded politely. "I am. But only with my full plan, which you refused to respect." He slammed his hand on the desk. "I can't believe you." I watched him struggle to regain control. The board members whispered nervously among themselves. Theo shook his head. "We made a huge mistake." I smiled faintly. "Yes," I whispered under my breath. "You did." The collapse had begun. By Thursday, the company was teetering on the edge. Every client email was a warning. Every error made by the trainee amplified the chaos. I walked through the office casually, sipping coffee, while Mr. Calder screamed at anyone who came near him. His usual charm, his confident smirk, it was gone. Fear had replaced it. I overheard one of the junior managers say, "We might have to shut down accounts for the weekend." Perfect. I returned to my desk and opened the system logs. Tiny mistakes compounded into bigger ones. The system generated alerts I had intentionally left in dormant sequences. Each one could trigger massive financial misreporting. I had been underestimated, ignored, treated like my work meant nothing. Now they depended entirely on me to save them. And I had a choice. I could save them completely, Or I could let them feel the consequences of their arrogance. Smiled. My revenge wasn't cruel. It wasn't reckless. It was precise. And by Friday, the full effects would be visible to everyone. Friday morning arrived like a storm. Clients called, investors demanded updates, and the board summoned an emergency video conference. The company's financial health was officially unstable. Mr. Calder's hands shook as he read emails aloud. Trainee stammered, trying to explain, but no one listened. I walked calmly into the meeting room. "Good morning," I said. The CEO turned to me, relief in his eyes. "Rachel, can you fix this?" He nodded. "I can. But not for free." The room froze. Mr. Calder's mouth dropped open. "Free? You're already our employee." I leaned forward. "I built the system. I know its secrets. Without me it collapses. You replaced me, you broke the company. Now you need me back." The board murmured. Some looked angry, some looked impressed. I added, "If I'm coming back, I need full control. And a proper contract. With guarantees. Or, you'll see how fragile this company really is." Mr. Calder's face twisted in frustration. "You're blackmailing us." Smiled. "I'm calling it reality." It was the first time I felt completely in charge. And I knew, by nightfall, they would realize how badly they had underestimated me. That evening, the first major crisis hit. A large client's account had been frozen due to errors in the trainee's handling of the system. Millions of dollars were on hold. Emails piled up. Panic spread through the office. Mr. Calder begged me for help. "Rachel, please, just fix this." I opened the logs, tracing every misstep. I could fix it in minutes, but I didn't. Instead, I sent a concise email to the board. "You removed me. You trusted a trainee. The results are clear. I can restore stability, but only if my terms are met." The CEO's face paled. "We don't have a choice," he muttered. I smiled privately. They had trapped themselves. Every error, every oversight, every misjudgment had led them here. The collapse was no accident. It was their arrogance. And I, the mastermind behind the system, was finally in control. Monday morning, I arrived at the office with a calm smile. The chaos from Friday hadn't stopped. If anything, it had escalated. Alarms were blinking in the system. Alerts flooded every department. Emails stacked higher than desks. Trainee looked like she might faint. Every key she pressed triggered another error. Every failed action was a reminder. She had no idea what she was doing. Mr. Calder stormed toward me, voice cracking. "Rachel, you have to fix this now. The board is furious." I nodded politely. "I can. But we need to address the cause first. Replacing me." He froze. "You're impossible." I ignored him. I logged into the system and began stabilizing the critical accounts, but not fully. I corrected enough to prevent catastrophic loss, but left minor errors in place. The board called an emergency meeting. Investors were panicking. Reports were late. Clients were demanding answers. I spoke calmly. "If you want me to restore full functionality, I need authority, a formal contract, and recognition of my system's control." Mr. Calder's face went pale. He realized he had underestimated me. For the first time, I felt true power. The arrogance of the company's leadership had brought them to their knees. And I had the choice: save them completely, or let them feel the consequences. By Tuesday, the errors had multiplied. Trainee was barely holding on, and Mr. Calder was panicking at every phone call. I walked past cubicles, observing the chaos with a calm that no one else shared. People whispered, "Where is Rachel?" I smiled inwardly. They were learning the hard way. My absence had revealed just how much they had relied on me. At lunchtime, the CEO called me privately. "Rachel, we need you back immediately. You have to fix this." Leaned back. "I will. But under my terms. Full control. My system, my rules." He hesitated, looking at Mr. Calder, who was sweating profusely. We agree." Finally, the power shifted. They realized that the company's survival depended entirely on me. I began stabilizing the system, carefully correcting errors, but I left critical vulnerabilities exposed. The collapse was only halfway done. The lesson wasn't complete. And I knew, when the company fully realized the cost of their arrogance, they would finally understand who really held the power. By Wednesday, word of the company's instability reached clients. Major transactions failed. Investors called repeatedly, questioning leadership. I stayed calm, pretending to type reports and monitor accounts. But inside I was satisfied. Every error was a ripple in the ocean of their mistake. Trainee approached me nervously. "Rachel, I think I broke it." He nodded. "Yes, you did. But don't worry, I can fix it." She looked relieved, but she didn't know that each fix I made was precise, restoring balance just enough to prevent complete disaster. Mr. Calder's panic grew. He tried to override the system, pressing buttons blindly. Every attempt triggered more alerts. He realized too late that I had built safeguards he couldn't bypass. The board demanded explanations. "Where is Rachel's replacement?" one executive asked. "She can't manage it," Mr. Calder admitted, voice trembling. We underestimated her." Smiled. Finally, the recognition I had been denied for years. The company was learning the truth the hard way. They couldn't survive without me. And I wasn't finished. By Thursday, the chaos reached a climax. Banks called, clients threatened to pull contracts, and auditors demanded answers. Trainee had completely lost control. I walked calmly through the office, observing the panic. Every glance at me screamed one thing. They feared my knowledge. Mr. Calder cornered me. "Rachel, you've gone too far. Fix this now." I shook my head. "I'm fixing it on my terms." I knew the board and CEO were listening. They finally understood. The company had been built on my system and my system alone. Without me, their empire crumbled. I decided to offer a lifeline, but only if they accepted my authority fully. Full control over the financial system. Formal contract. Respect for my work. They agreed. Reluctantly. Desperately. Felt good. Not revenge for the sake of hate, but justice. The recognition I deserved, finally acknowledged. And as I logged in to restore full functionality, I left small alerts dormant, just enough to remind them that their arrogance had consequences. By Friday, stability returned, but only under my command. The company breathed again, but everyone knew who saved it. Mr. Calder tried to act confident in meetings, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. Trainee avoided me entirely. I sent a private memo to the CEO. "System restored. Any future changes require my approval." The board nodded. My terms were set. My system was untouchable. I smiled privately. This was more than a professional victory. This was proof that intelligence, patience, and persistence always outlast arrogance. And as I watched Mr. Calder sweat over minor alerts, I realized. The collapse I had orchestrated, the chaos I had allowed, and the power I now held, it was the perfect lesson. They had replaced me. They had underestimated me. Now they had no choice but to respect me. And the revenge. It was just beginning. Monday morning arrived with tension in the air. The company was still recovering, but clients and investors were anxious. Every email to our office was a reminder. My absence had exposed a dangerous truth. Trainee looked pale, hands shaking as she tried to follow my instructions. Every misstep she made triggered alerts, and Mr. Calder hovered over her. Desperate, terrified, and powerless. I walked past them calmly. "Relax. It's manageable," I said politely. Inside I smiled. This was the payoff for years of being ignored. At the executive meeting, the CEO asked, "Rachel, are you sure the system is secure now?" He nodded. "Yes, fully secure, but it requires respect and authority. Without it, disaster could happen again." Mr. Calder's face turned red. "That's ridiculous." The board leaned forward. They knew better. They had seen the chaos. I realized then, the power dynamic had shifted completely. I wasn't just an employee. I was indispensable. Without me, the company collapsed. And they had all underestimated me. By Tuesday, the pressure intensified. A major client called, furious about delayed payments. Investors threatened to withdraw funding. Mr. Calder tried to intervene, but every attempt only worsened the situation. I quietly observed, monitoring every account. I could fix everything, but I didn't, not entirely. I leaned over to Trainee. "Don't worry. You're doing fine for a trainee." She looked confused, not realizing I was deliberately letting minor issues persist. Every small error was a lesson for the board and Mr. Calder. The CEO finally called me aside. "Rachel, we cannot survive another week like this. Give me your demands." Smiled. "Permanent authority over the system, proper contract, and recognition for all my work. Anything less, and the chaos continues." He nodded reluctantly. He understood the stakes. I had turned the situation to my advantage. I wasn't angry anymore. I was in control. And the company had no choice but to accept. Wednesday, the company faced another crisis. Lee accidentally deleted a batch of critical entries. Panic swept through accounting. Alerts blared. Emails and calls from clients flooded the office. Mr. Calder ran around like a man possessed. "Rachel, fix this before the board sees it." I calmly logged in, corrected the deletions, and restored balance, but only partially. Enough to prevent total collapse, yet enough to remind everyone that without me, the company would crumble. The board began to whisper, realizing the truth they had ignored for years. The company had been built on my work. Every critical system, every safeguard, every contingency plan had my fingerprints. I finally leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, "They thought they could replace me. Now they know better." The lesson was unfolding exactly as I had planned. Thursday brought the breaking point. A financial audit revealed discrepancies in several client accounts. Panic spread like wildfire. Investors threatened lawsuits. Emails poured in from angry clients. Mr. Calder's arrogance had dissolved. He came to me pleading, "Rachel, you have to fix this. I'll do anything." I looked at him coldly. "Anything?" He nodded frantically. "Yes, anything." I leaned back and smiled faintly. "Very well. But remember this. Without me, none of this works. I am the system. You are lucky I am willing to save you." The CEO nodded. "We understand, Rachel. Full authority, immediately." I logged in and stabilized the system completely. The crisis passed, but the memory of their failure would never leave them. I had shown them the consequences of underestimating me. And now they had to respect every line of code I had written. Friday arrived. Calm had returned, but everyone in the office knew who truly controlled the company. Trainee avoided me entirely, terrified and humiliated. Mr. Calder tried to regain confidence, but every glance at the system reminded him. He had failed. The CEO finally spoke publicly in the meeting. "Rachel, your work saved us. Effective immediately. All financial operations will be under your authority." He nodded. My revenge was complete, not with anger but with justice. The arrogance and disrespect I had endured for years had been corrected. I looked at the board and whispered to myself, "You thought I was replaceable. You were wrong." And for the first time in years I felt peace. I had not only saved the company, but had ensured that my value was finally recognized. The collapse had been a lesson. The victory complete. Monday morning, the results of the week's chaos became undeniable. Investors were pulling out, clients were threatening to sue, and the board was in open panic. Mr. Calder tried to explain to the CEO, but his words faltered. "We didn't anticipate this." I smiled faintly. He hadn't anticipated me. I walked into the boardroom, calm and composed. "The company survives because of me," I said simply. "Without my system, without my oversight, This collapse would have been total. The CEO nodded. We understand. Full control of the financial system will remain with Rachel permanently. Mr. Calder's face went red. That's ridiculous. I looked directly at him. It's reality. You replaced me. You ignored me. Now you are paying the price. The board murmured their agreement. Investors had begun rebuilding confidence. Not in him but in me. It was a complete reversal. The arrogant leader was now powerless. By Wednesday, the final dominoes fell. Trainee made another critical mistake, accidentally reversing several high-value transactions. The office erupted in chaos. Mr. Calder ran around, helpless. Rachel, fix this. I leaned back, arms crossed, watching. Every alert reminded me of the arrogance I had endured. Finally, I intervened, but fully under my terms. I restored order, stabilized all accounts, and implemented new safeguards only I could authorize. The lesson was clear. The company could not function without me. The board began whispering, acknowledging publicly. We underestimated Rachel. For years, I had been invisible, ignored, and undervalued. Now my authority was absolute. And the lesson had been learned in full. Thursday, the public news broke. Several financial journals reported that the company had narrowly avoided a collapse thanks to an internal expert, Rachel. Clients called to apologize for any inconvenience. Investors publicly acknowledged their confidence in my management. I watched Mr. Calder squirm in the background. He had lost all credibility. His arrogant demeanor had crumbled, replaced by fear and shame. Even Trainee avoided my eyes. I realized something important. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about recognition, justice, and proving my worth. And I had done all three. Friday, I signed the formal contract. My authority over the financial system was permanent. All previous missteps and disrespect were acknowledged by the board. I looked around the office. The staff now treated me with respect, not fear. I felt calm, strong, and proud. Mr. Calder quietly resigned, unable to face the truth. His arrogance had cost him everything. Trainee was reassigned. Her failure a lesson in humility. I had survived betrayal, chaos, and disrespect. I had rebuilt not just the system but my value. I whispered to myself. They thought I was replaceable. They were wrong. The company now thrived under my authority. And for the first time I felt completely in control of my life and work. Months later, the company was stronger than ever. Investors praised the new management structure. And I was recognized as the mastermind behind its success. Mr. Calder's absence was a quiet victory. No apology could restore the trust he had broken. Trainee learned humility. And the staff knew the price of disrespect. I walked through the office, smiling. I had proven my intelligence, my patience, and my value. I had survived emotional injustice and had taken back control. For the first time I realized, true power doesn't come from titles or recognition. It comes from skill, knowledge, and courage. And I had all three.